Lewis Orford has signed a new 5-year deal with West Ham United. This is great news for all concerned. Obviously, look, the player himself comes from a family of West Ham fans. It's good news for the team. It's great news for the academy. There's lots of things, but there's a little, almost like a little side narrative that runs alongside this, which has been the club's inability to tie down our best youngsters to long-term contracts. We've had a bit of a block there, and that block, as I've mentioned before, has been caused by Reece Oxford. Now, why would Reece Oxford impact something that's happening now? Well, Reece Oxford, as you remember, he came through, had an absolutely amazing debut against Mesut Ozil, against Arsenal. He was a centre-back, but he played in central midfield, defensive midfield, had Ozil in his pocket. There was all the memes and all the gifs about him literally having Mesut Ozil was sort of being superimposed and photoshopped into Reece Oxford's pocket. Off the back of that, everyone got excited. He was called the next Bobby Moore and all of that sort of stuff. West Ham gave him a big contract. And they gave him £20,000 a week, which is a big deal. You know, it's a big deal for a 16-year-old, no doubt about it at all. The rest is sort of history, really. It didn't work out for Oxford, and West Ham lost money on it, really. He didn't turn out to be the superstar we thought. But because that one didn't work out, it was almost like the spectre and the shadow of that loomed over everything else West Ham have done in terms of trying to tie down our best young players to contracts, even to the point where it was difficult for Declan Rice to get a deal. And it was almost as if it had sown the seed within the club of mistrust of academy prospects. And I think sometimes you can't see the wood you can't see the wood for the trees. And there's a lot of benefits and bonuses to having young academy talent in your team. And I think the club lost sight of that, really. And I'm really, really pleased this has done. Look, let's deal with the player himself first. Lewis Orford is an incredibly talented player. He's a central midfielder. A lot of you would have seen him. He was involved in Lopetegui's squad for the pre-season games. He played against Ferencváros, played against Dagenham and Redbridge, went out with the club to Tampa, to Florida, and featured prominently in the training and the build-up for pre-season. He's a really, really good player, right? A really good player. He is the future. However, there hadn't been the best build-up for him this season, because when West Ham were pursuing the Jhon Duran transfer, Aston Villa said, can you include this guy? Now, as far as we're concerned, he was added to the deal. Now, the club will deny this, and I guess I don't want to rake this stuff up because it's good. The outcome has been excellent, but I think it probably focused attentions of everybody to try and get his deal over the line, because Orford only had 1 year left remaining on his West Ham contract. It was clear that Aston Villa wanted him. Why wouldn't they? He was just off the back of a really good season for West Ham. Well, 2 cracking seasons for West Ham, it has to be said. But he just captained England under-18s and done so really, really well. And I think Villa had probably looked and thought, there's a young player we wouldn't mind. So we were asked to put him in the deal for Duran to help sweeten the deal. Look, whatever happens, he certainly wasn't included in the last 2 offers that West Ham made for Duran, which were ultimately unsuccessful anyway. I think it focused minds, and West Ham had to think, right, okay, we need to get this guy tied down. He's incredibly talented, and if you can't tie down the England captain, if you can't tie down someone that's won an FA Youth Cup, if you cannot make one of these academy graduates who's a West Ham fan and is as good as anyone at his age group, if you can't get them to sign, then what point is there in having the academy? You might as well not have that badge where the players walk out and it says the Academy of Football. It's sort of it's printed onto the carpet at the London Stadium, isn't it? There's no point having that. There's no point being the Academy of Football if you can't bring your young players through. So this is a really, really big deal. He was involved in a couple of squads last season as well for David Moyes. Never made the first team. I think he should have done. I think there were a couple of occasions where he probably should have done. But make no mistake about it, I think Lewis Orford and also Freddie Potts, I think they're the reason that Flynn Downs was allowed to go as well. I do think we got, the club looked at it and thought, okay, we got good cover there now. And look, Flynn Downs, great player, excellent player, West Ham lad himself, but you're probably looking at Potts and you're probably looking at Orford thinking, well, these guys can be even better than him. These guys, even if they're not quite at his standard now, they will be better than him. So I think it's really good. It's great news. Look, Mark Noble has played his part in this. He really has. Mark Noble and Tim Steidten have both got involved. And it's important for Noble to do so because unless it's changed recently, and there's reason to suspect that Noble's role has changed somewhat because we see him involved in first team training quite a lot. You see him, he's constantly pictured alongside Lopetegui. I don't know what was going on last season, but David Moyes definitely included Mark Noble. I'm not saying that he didn't, but in almost like in the club infrastructure, you get the impression now that Noble is more involved in almost day-to-day training as well. However, as far as I know, the last official announcement was he was technical director or sporting director. It gets confusing, doesn't it? Tim Steidten is director of football. Mark Noble is sporting director. But he is mandated with basically creating a pathway to the first team for the youngsters. He more or less is in charge of the academy. So with that in mind, I was pleased to see him getting involved in this, and for Tim Steidten as well, because I think possibly left to their own devices, which possibly would have been, those two not being involved and just a club trying to get this deal over the line, I'm not sure it would have got done. A lot of praise has got to go to those two. A lot of praise, I think, has got to go to the club for backing down on this as well. Praise definitely to the player, to his agents who obviously helped facilitate the deal and allow it to go through as well. It's one thing saying, I think, as a player, I want to stay at West Ham. West Ham's my home club. Not that any of these comments are attributed to Orford, who's been silent. He's remained silent throughout. I think it's one thing saying I'm a West Ham fan and so on and so forth, but it takes another leap to actually, to show it and to prove it. But it took willing from the club. I don't know. The truth of the matter is, I don't know what his wages are. I don't know. I know it's a 5-year deal. In many respects, it's none of my business, right, what his wages are. It's just great that he signed a deal. And a 5-year deal, it is so significant because I do think it casts aside that cloud that really has been hovering over, like the cartoon cloud, the Acme cloud, where it's just sort of followed over and it's raining on top of you. It feels that Lewis Orford has cast that shadow over any of our deals for quite some time now. And I felt we needed to do at least one good deal to almost break that. And I do think if Lewis does come through now, which I think he will do, then I think we don't have to worry about that anymore. We've got the best crop of young talent we've had for some time. I saw Orford play. Well, I'll tell you now, Orford's playing tonight. He's he's in the squad. He's in the squad tonight for the game against Reading. So the under-21s are playing against Reading tonight at the Medeski. It's not the Medeski. It's the something car hire stadium. It's a bad name. It's the worst stadium name I've ever heard, but it's a good stadium, by the way. I'm going to go tonight, so I probably shouldn't say anything too derogatory. No, it is a good stadium. It really is. Reading, good club. Really, really good club, actually. And but whatever it's called, the car leasing stadium or something like that. So he's going to be featuring tonight. So obviously he's not involved in the first team. He wasn't involved in the first team for the game against Aston Villa. That much you can understand. But he's in the under-21s. He's 18. I watched him in the under-21s last season. I went and watched him and I saw him at Wycombe. And I think it was I guess this is the EFL Trophy tonight, but last season it was in the EFL Trophy. The under-21s played the Wycombe men's team. But I've mentioned this numerous times, so please, you have to excuse me, and you might switch off because you've heard me say this before. It wasn't really a bunch of 21-year-olds that were playing against Wycombe's men's team. It was youngsters. And Orford was 17 at the time. Carried himself really, really well. And you've got to remember, West Ham's youth development has been so good in recent years. We're recruiting really, really well. In European competition, we did really well in the European competition last season. We got to I think we might have lost out to PSV, but got to the semi-finals. That was really good. We're the only team to progress into the group stage of the EFL Trophy. Again, with a very young team. Now, if you don't know what the EFL Trophy is, it's basically League 1 and League 2 men's teams play. It's a competition. It's a St Johnstone's Paint Trophy, is what it used to be called. And what they've allowed is some academy teams to participate. West Ham's academy team was by far the best. Basically, the kids were playing against the grown-ups. The kids did magnificently. And Orford looked ready to play men's football. Absolutely clear about that. They did really, really well in Premier League 2. Obviously, the year before that, the under-18s have won the FA Youth Cup, smashed the FA Youth Cup thrashed Arsenal in the final, thrashed Southampton in the semi-final. It's a really good crop of young players at West Ham. But it's great news. Delighted to hear that news today. Delighted to hear that Lewis Orford has joined West Ham. Not joined, but he's remaining at West Ham for the next 5 years. It allows the club to plan. I don't know what the future is. Maybe he's going to go out on loan. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen now. I think it would possibly be quite a good thing for him. But make no mistake about it. If he does go out on loan, he'll do really well because he's a talented player. Just needs some minutes now. He may well get some minutes tonight. I'm going to say I'm going to go up there and I'll let you know. I'll let you know how the team got on tomorrow. I'm quite sure. But look, Lewis Orford, deal done. He's not going to Aston Villa. He's staying at West Ham. It's more good news. It appears that West Ham managed to keep their best senior players, sign a load, and I mean a load, of top-level transfers, the likes of Todibo and Wan-Bissaka, players like that coming in. And it now looks like we're able to not only keep our youngsters like Lewis Orford, but it seems like we're getting good loan deals for them now. Like Callum Marshall going out, George Murphy went out to Bristol City, obviously got involved in their late goal at the weekend. There's a more cerebral, there's a more measured, there's a more structured approach to West Ham at the moment. And I, for one, am loving it. So, yeah, listen, well done to all involved. There's been a lot of good news at West Ham this season and this transfer window. This one had gone a little bit quiet for a little while, which made you wonder, what's going on behind the scenes here? It's done. Great news. 5-year deal, Lewis Orford.